I'ma keep winning, winning. I'ma keep winning, winning. Ooh. I'ma keep winning, winning. You can try to save yourself, I'ma keep winning, but you only go.
What's going on, guys? JK, I'm back with another video, and today I'm going to be looking at Daniel Jeremiah's top 50 NFL draft prospects rankings 3.0. This is his new revision of it, moving guys up and down the board right after the NFL Combine took place last week. So I'm going to look through it and review it. But before we get into it, make sure to like the video, comment down below anything you agreed or disagreed with that I talk about in here, and make sure to subscribe to the channel for future NFL content I'm going to be putting out, whether it's NFL draft, free agency that's coming up next week on Wednesday, and pro days coming up, and how NFL draft prospects rise up and down the board. Make sure to subscribe to keep up with all that. So jumping into this is right after the NFL Combine, some adjustments that Daniel Jeremiah has made. I'm kind of curious to see how much change that he's actually going to have and how many risers and how much of risers. If I had to guess, Armand Membu's going to be a big riser in here. Jared Wilson's going to be a big riser. I'm going to try to scan through it. I don't want to make it a super long video, so some of the guys I might just, gloss over a little bit that are kind of, dissimilar. So, number one and two, obviously, there's no changes. Abdul Carter and the pure dominant edge rusher that is probably going to be one of the top players taking this draft, whether it's to the Titans, I think, whether it's at one or three. They're definitely looking to pretty much take Abdul Carter, and in my opinion, I do think he's the best player in this class. And number two, he does end up having Travis Hunter here. No change as well to two or three. Travis Hunter is one of the better pure players. Is he going to play corner, receiver? I think he's going to end up primarily playing receiver. Where he's going to fall is definitely going to depend on what the Browns do. The Browns could end up taking him at two. The Titans could end up taking him at one. I don't think the Giants necessarily, if both quarterbacks are off the board, I think the Giants will take him. But I think the Giants are mainly going to be looking for Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders. So that's kind of the fitting spot for him. I think his ball skills and the way he plays, in my opinion, I think that he should be a corner that spots on the offensive side of the ball at receiver. But I think mainly he's just going to want to play receiver, and most teams are going to want to have him at receiver. He's going to want to look to make the most money, and receivers make a lot more money than corners. So I think that he's going to stay on the offensive side of the ball and be more of a receiver for whatever team drafts him. Number three doesn't change either. Ashton Jeanty. This is a generational running back class. This is probably, in my opinion, since I've been following the draft, since about 2018, 2017-ish, since I've been following it this like hard and in depth. I think this is the deepest and best running back class that I think I've ever seen. And Ashton Jeanty is definitely up there and the number one running back. There has been some discussions ever since the combine that some teams might have Amarion Hampton from North Carolina ranked above him, and there's going to be multiple running backs taken in the first round, and Hampton could go higher than what a lot of people think. But here, he still has Ashton Jeanty above him. But most teams are kind of feeling from what sources say that they're a little bit closer than what a lot of people think. Number four, Mason Graham. I do think that he is a one of the better players in this class. He's going to be a very dominant player. He's a little bit undersized at defense tackle, so at the combine that raised a little bit of questions. Also, he didn't participate in any drills. But once you look at him, from his tape point of view, his undersizedness doesn't really matter. If you go just based on measurables, like if Trent Baalke was still a GM in Jacksonville, they probably wouldn't draft him because certain teams only go off measurables. But if you just pop on the tape and see, he had a very dominant interior performance at Michigan. He caused havoc on the interior no matter whether it was passing or run defense. He was always there and he was always making the plays on it. He somehow just finds the ball, gets off blockers very well, and he's always has his nose around where the ball's going. He uses his leverage very well for a guy that's undersized so that he doesn't end up getting overpowered by a bigger offensive lineman. So I think he just uses his ability, and maybe in a weaker class, he rises up a little bit more. Maybe in last year he doesn't go this high, but I think he still would be a first round pick, and I think he's going to end up going either at least in the top eight. I think the latest point that he goes is the Panthers at eight. Number five, Tyler Warren. Tyler Warren's more of that George Kittle type vibe. He does both run and block. He was pretty much used everywhere by Penn State. He was used at Wildcat quarterback. He lined up in the slot. He lined up at the end of the line of scrimmage. He's considered one of the best players in this draft just from a pure prospect point of view at tight end. And what usually hurts tight ends is positional value. A lot of people don't really value the tight ends as much, that position. But in this class, I think the realistic discussion right now with Tyler Warren is, could he go number 5 to the Jaguars? The Jaguars just released Evan Ingram, and they still have Strange in there at tight end, but they could be looking to add more weapons for Trevor Lawrence, and not just at the receiver point of view. They could not just be Tedero McMillan or a receiver. They could look to add Tyler Warren. A lot of teams are going to love him, and he could be used in all types of ways, as I said before, in all those different positions to be able to impact the game, whether it was receiving or blocking. I think it's kind of funny that he does kind of look like Dan Campbell a little bit, in my opinion, from that tight end spot, but that's really kind of that mentality, that Detroit Lions, Dan Campbell type mentality that he really plays the game with. Number 6 is interesting. He has Colston Loveland. Now, Colston Loveland's more of the smaller, leaner tight end that is very similar to more of a Brock Bowers. He lines up mostly in the slot or in the wing position, is most of the time. Sometimes he'll end up chipping and getting the blocking in, but he doesn't really block that much. He's more of that receiving, natural receiving tight end that a lot of teams are going to really have. This is another one that before the combine, a lot of people started having in that kind of 20s area to the Broncos, Chargers, teams like that. But he's somebody that could be seen and taken a lot higher. I think number 14 to the Colts could be one of the kind of ceilings that he could end up going and being picked in this draft. Jalen Walker, I'm not the biggest fan of him. I mean, I would have him a little bit lower, but a lot of the NFL scouts are really liking him and his explosiveness and length and kind of just his overall ability to be an athlete. He didn't really perform at the combine, so I think that's why Loveland kind of went over him. But he was somebody that played linebacker and edge. He was able to play both position at Georgia, and he was able to kind of mix in between and make a difference that way. But I do think mainly is that. Uh, Mainly Jalen Walker will end up being whatever team drafts him. He'll be an edge rusher for that team. He's going to be one of the better pure edge rushers. He's definitely going to need to be coached up. He's going to be raw. Both the Georgia guys in this class are Jalen Walker and Mykel Williams. They're both going to be very raw prospects that need to be developed, but they have all the tools in the world to be able to be a great pass rusher in this league. And he would be kind of like a Son Reddick type build. I necessarily wouldn't have him this high. I would have him more in the late 20s. But I think a lot of the other edge rushers, in my opinion, are a little bit higher than him. But a lot of the guys like Daniel Jeremiah and Mel Kiper have him a lot higher than what most people do. Jahdae Barron's another one that is a lot higher by NFL teams and Jeremiah Mel Kiper compared to a lot of the media. He is very quick and he put on a show at the combine. He showed off his crazy athletic ability. I think at this point in the draft, a lot of the other corners have had a lot of injury history or injury problems. I think Jahdae Barron from Texas could have the opportunity to be the number 1 corner taken off the board. Daniel Jeremiah kind of, compares him to Brian Branch when he was coming out of Alabama here. I could see a similarity. He's a little bit smaller, but he has all the athletic ability to be able to do that. He does lack a little bit of top speed, he says, but I think in the 40 he was able to kind of, debunk that, and he was at one of the faster 40s at the combine. And I think that he's able to pretty much his ball skills and the way that he's able to read and anticipate catches to be able to go up and make a play. I would say that he's a sneaky option to be the first corner taken in the draft. I could see a lot of people have had Will Johnson kind of falling down a lot of boards. He could be a guy that ends up jumping Will Johnson in this draft and be the number 1 corner. Number 9, another guy that I'm not a huge fan of is Will Johnson, or not Will Campbell from LSU, the tackle, the 3-year starter. Now, in my opinion, you look at all the accolades of him, and you're like, oh yeah, this is a great tackle. He's 6'6". In my opinion, I think that he plays too high at LSU. He stands straight up, and he doesn't get enough movement in the running game for me to be able to pick him as a top tackle in this class. I would have him a little bit lower, and I think a lot of the other linemen are better than him. I would take Kelvin Banks, Tyler Booker, Armand Membu over Will Campbell. He has a great pass set, but he does get beat. His feet aren't the cleanest in his pass set. He gets beat a lot on the inside if you go and watch the film. And with him not playing with that natural aggression to be able to try to drive and move guys off the ball, he kind of struggles with it. He's a stalemate at the line of scrimmage a lot of time. He's not creating crazy movement in the running game. I'm not the biggest fan of him, but he's another guy that a lot of the media guys end up loving, a lot of scouts loving, and he could end up being a top 10 pick. I wouldn't take him that high. I would rather take Membu or Banks or somebody else like that, but he's a guy that a lot of the scouts end up loving. Number 10, Cam Ward. Cam Ward, in my opinion, as of right now, if the Titans trade back, I think he's going to be the number one pick in the draft. As of right now, I think he's going to be the number one pick no matter what, because I think no matter what team is picking there, he's going to be the pick. The Titans could end up trading back. I think the Titans, as of right now, have decided since they released Harold Landry, I think that they've decided that they're going to take Abdul Carter, or at least try to take Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter. I think that they're going to look to trade back with the Giants. I think the Giants are going to end up jumping up to number one. Now, all this can change. We still have almost a month and a half until the NFL draft. We still have free agency. So a lot of this could end up changing and switching up. But I think the Giants are going to move up to one and eventually take Cam Ward. Cam Ward has all the tools in the world. He is one of the better players in the draft. He makes a ton of plays. His real issue that he needs to have, he needs to cut down on turnovers. Sometimes he's looking to do a little bit too much, but he usually always stays calm, and that's what I like about him. And that being able to play quarterback, you don't want to get overwhelmed. You don't want to create pressure for yourself. And he does a good job of not doing that. Number 11, somebody that went up 7 spots is Armand Membu. Armand Membu is one of my favorite tackles in this class. I've had done a breakdown on every offensive lineman in this class. If you haven't seen it, I have a playlist on the channel, so please go and watch all those. Armand Membu is one of the ones I did, and he has a crazy first step. He's very quick off the ball, and that's what you've seen at the combine. He ran one of the fastest 40s. He was very smooth in his movement throughout the drills, and he was able to pretty much show off his athletic ability that you can see on tape. He's needs to be in the wide zone scheme though. Maybe it's like a 49ers or Dolphins, but most teams are running that wide zone scheme now in the NFL. So he does a great job there. He played mostly right tackle at Missouri. He could play guard or tackle, in my opinion. I think he's kind of like that Elijah Vera Tucker build from a couple of years ago. And every single time that he needed to make a reach on the outside to be able to seal the edge, Missouri would run to his side every single time, and he would seal that edge and allow that running back to get at least 4 or 5 yards on the outside zone play every single time. He made it to that point of attack, and he was able to turn his butt and seal that edge. I think that's why him with that athleticism is what we're kind of able to see at the combine on film. You're like, hey, this guy is very athletic, but we're gonna have to see how he comes and tests out. And he ended up blowing out of the water, so that's why he rises up so much here at 7. And I think he goes top 10 now. I think he could be in play for the Jets. I think he could be in play for the Saints. I think he could be in play for the Bears. He could even be in play for the Jaguars, depending on how they see the offensive line. They were kind of making movement there. On that with a lot of their roster. So they could end up taking a Membu even at 5. Maybe even the Patriots wanted to go in and protect Drake May. So anywhere from that 4 to 10 range is where I think he's going to go. I think he's definitely going to be going in the top 10 now. Jahad Campbell's another one that kind of doesn't go as high in mocks, but a lot of the guys end up loving him on their big boards. He kind of just goes with he's one of these guys that he's going to be a linebacker, but somebody might try to move him in an edge. I know he says here he initially moved to linebacker because of the Crimson Tide's edge depth with Will Anderson Jr. and Dallas Turner from the last 2 years. And he kind of just moved to linebacker and was able to explode it out. He's tall, he's rangy, and he's able to go and make a lot of the plays. He doesn't really possess the elite instincts, is what Daniel Jeremiah says, but he definitely has the physical traits of it with the excellent speed and physicality to be able to go and make plays. I think he's gonna go in that mid 20s area, maybe the early 20s if a team ends up wanting him, but I think he goes around that area. And then Will Johnson, the guy that a lot of people haven't really been talking about a lot, he had a lot of injury issues, and a lot of the questions was, is he as fast as what he is? He was a lockdown corner at Michigan until he ended up getting hurt and had to miss a lot of the game. He ended up having a pick six against USC where he had a crazy read on the quarterback's eyes. And that's really what questions is about his speed and his range to be able to attack. He's not really too aggressive where he plays, but he's definitely a lockdown corner with a big size. And I think some teams are going to end up liking that. If he ends up falling to the 49ers, I think that's essentially where he would go at 11. And that's where a lot of people are starting to mock him. Robert Saleh is back over there, defensive coordinator, and he would want somebody like a Sauce Gardner. 14, Omarion Hampton. Like I said, Hampton came out on the combine and he exploded the combine. He's jumped up 5 spots here on Daniel Jeremiah's board. And like we've said with a lot of reports, he is a lot closer to Genty than what a lot of people think. And like what Daniel Jeremiah says here, he will occasionally run up the back of blockers. So that's not his vision is a little bit in question there. He's not as consistent with his vision, but once he's able to bounce it to the outside, he has the speed to be able to make it and make a very long play. If he's able to get into the hole early and pretty much just bounce it to the outside, he's gone. And it's really his size with the combination of his speed. If he can, be able to improve his vision and get more of those instincts from the ball, I think that he could be a very good running back. I think he's going to go in the first round. I think he could end up going as high as number 10 to the Bears, but I do think he's going to go anywhere from 10 to 25 with the Chargers, in that area. So he's definitely going to be a first round pick, in my opinion, at this point. He's big, he's athletic, and he has tons of speed. Another guy that blew up the combine that's been rising up a lot of boards is Matthew Golden. Jalen Jeremiah has him as the number one receiver, if you're not counting Travis Hunter in this class. And this is another shocking one of a lot of reports that we've had is Matthew Golden over Tetairoa McMillan. A lot of the reports have said, don't be shocked if Matthew Golden is the number one receiver taken in the draft over Tetairoa McMillan. And it's had a lot of Tetairoa McMillan falling down a lot of boards. But Matthew Golden came out and he ran one of the fastest 40s at the combine, and he's just an athletic freak that makes big plays when it's needed. If you were watching a game and Texas needed a big play, it was Matthew Golden that was making the big play. He saved their season against Arizona State, and he made a huge impact in that overtime. His incredibly polished. He has great instincts. He's tough, and he spends a lot of time operating out of the slot. So he's a little bit of a shorter guy that plays a little bit in the slot. But I think that would be a great fit with a lot of these teams. The Cowboys could need another wide receiver. Him and CD kind of in that similar area would be great to be able to bounce both of them around the different positions. But at this point, a lot of the reports have been saying that Matthew Golden's going to be the number one receiver taking the draft, but that could change over time. But I guess we'll see how it goes. And then the other mate that's with him that is number 16 is Tetairoa McMillan. He's kind of been falling down a lot of boards. He's been, going down. And he's very similar to Drake London. He's 6'5". He has crazy length, crazy speed. I think it definitely hurt him that he couldn't work out at the combine because he would have blew it up with his crazy athleticism that he has with a combination of his size. But the little bit of the argument is that there's similar guys in this draft that could be taken in the second and third round that have similar skill sets to him. And he's kind of been falling down a lot of boards. Some Jeremiah and Mel Kiper both have had him in the 20 area when he was going and being mocked as early as number 4 to the Patriots. So I think that we could end up seeing him slide. I think he's a freak of nature that's going to be similar to kind of like Mike Evans. And a lot of teams might end up passing on him just because there's later options later on in the second and third round. Another receiver that a lot of teams have really started to like is Emeka Egbuka. He's another guy that ends up teams have been rising up the boards, and some teams have him as the number one receiver in the class. So it's really these top 3 receivers that are going to be the biggest impact in this draft to see where they go and who's going to be the number one receiver taken off the board. But Abuka, he had a great day at the combine. He's a great physical receiver. He is mostly yak ability, so it's really him being able to catch the ball, make a guy miss, and get the most out of a lot of plays. He's not really like a huge, big play type of guy, but he's more get the ball underneath, and he's gonna go make a play and make a small gain into a big gain. That's really what he does, and it's mostly on vertical routes. So he's able to track the ball well, and he has a knack for utilizing late hands, and he has some of the better hands in the draft. Some teams like the Steelers could look to take him, even though I think that they're going to be leaning more towards corner. Some team could end up trading up into the late half of the first round to be able to take him, but he could even go up even to the Cowboys at 12 and be the first receiver off the board. And Jeremiah compares him to he could have a very huge impact, kind of like Jackson Smith and Jigba for a team out of the slot. Number 18, he has Shedeur Sanders. I'm not a big fan of Shedeur Sanders, but as of right now, it's going to be definitely weary because a lot of the sources that we've gotten is was at the combine. He was kind of seen as arrogant, and not a lot of teams ended up liking him, especially, teams like the Browns and a lot of those sources. But I do think they still goes high. The Raiders just traded for Geno Smith, so I think that they're going to be out on Shedeur Sanders. I think that they're going to go another direction, possibly Genty at 6. I do think that the Browns are considering taking Shedeur Sanders. I think the first two picks in this draft are going to be Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. I think Cam Ward goes one to the Giants. I think the Browns take Shedeur here to be able to replace Deshaun Watson because Deshaun Watson's not going to play all of next year. And I think that they're pretty much hoping that they can get out of the Deshaun Watson contract while having a rookie on his rookie deal to be able to replace him and kind of just eat that dead cap that Deshaun Watson is going to give with one of the worst contracts in NFL history. But Shedeur, he creates a lot of pressure for himself, which I don't necessarily like. He ends up, that could be also, though, with a bad O-line that he's had at Colorado. So it's a lot of his footwork needs to get a little bit better, and he ends up, drifting in the pocket a lot when he doesn't need to and just kind of creates pressure for himself. But, those can kind of be worked out by NFL coaches and just with him getting more comfortable with his offensive line. At 19, we have another riser who blew up the combine, Nick Emmanwori from South Carolina. He could potentially be the number one safety. Him and Malachi Starks are kind of looked at as the number one safeties, and they're going to probably go in the late first round. The Bills are one of the big teams that need a safety that could end up taking one, and maybe the Commanders end up taking a safety. And he had one of the best combine days out of any safety in NFL history. He went out there and he showed off in the drills how fluent he's able to move and his 40 time. And if you watch this tape, his ideal instincts and ball skills definitely show out. He definitely has his ups and downs. Against the run, he is aggressive to fill, and he's a strong tackler on the front side. But he does have some misses when chasing from the backside. So a lot of times, if he's able to come up and hit you and make those hits, he's able to pretty much make the tackle guaranteed. But sometimes when he's falling down and trying to chase someone down, he's not the best at that. But he's definitely a difference maker for whatever team drafts him. He's a freak athlete, and he's going to be one of the better players. And the safeties taken in this class, it's going to be the competition between him and Malachi Starks. And number 20, the last one that I'm going to be looking at in this video is Mykel Williams. Mykel Williams, he reminds me a lot of Travon Walker. Him not being able to, perform at the combine, with him suffering an injury, definitely kind of hurt him because he was a guy that definitely has crazy talent and crazy athleticism, and he would have been able to blow up the combine. I know I've said that a couple times with a couple of these guys, but in this class, it's a lot of freak athletes that need to be developed. And Mykel Williams is that area. I think that he's fallen down the board a little bit. He was seeing his potential play at one point. A lot of people were having mock number 8 to the Panthers. I think some people have Shamar Stewart kind of over him and being drafted over him. I really like the fitting spot with the Falcons in there with him, somewhere that he could go and develop. And the Falcons end up liking a lot of freak athletes. They took Drake London a couple of years ago. They took Kyle Pitts. Those were two kind of freak athletes. And then they made the surprise selection, taking Michael Penix. So I do think Mykel Williams would fit in there and be able to develop there to be able to, put his length and his athleticism into use to being a dominant edge rusher. So in this video, I'm just going to go over the first 20. If you want to go look at it and look at the next 30 of the top 50 guys, you can go to NFL.com and look at Daniel Jeremiah's top 50 rankings 3.0. But make sure to like the video, comment down below anything you agreed or disagree with. Make sure to subscribe to the channel for future NFL content I'm going to be putting out. And thanks for watching.
Yeah, feel like John Moran. Need a triple-double. Told him check the stats. Yeah, I got a couple. I don't drop the ball. Now I never fumble. I'm the MVP. Now I feel like Russell. Feel like John Moran. Need a triple-double.